So I wanted to make a little video how to refurb the power seat parts. This is from 1967 Cadillac. This has been sitting in the car that had some rust, windows rusted out. I think overall the stuff's in good shape in this car. I haven't tested anything yet. I don't even want to try to make stuff move because the grease dries out in these things and it gets really hard, and I don't want to mess up what's here. I want to take them apart, clean them, paint them, re-grease everything, and I'm going to show the process of doing that. I've already done it on the other side. This is what the finished product's going to look like. Took apart the little gearboxes for the different movements. You got one in the middle that moves the seat front and back. You got one on the front there on the left side there that tilts the seat back, and then you got the one on the back which raises the entire seat up. Well, it's part of raising the seat up. So they all kind of work together to raise the seat up level. So I'm just going to show a little bit about taking these apart and cleaning them up. Also, I'm going to talk about some parts that I had to buy for the slides. I got these off of eBay, and you can see the name on them there. They're it says properparts.com. I guess you could go to their website directly too. These things fit pretty much every GM model. The ones that came out of the seats were in bad shape and damaged. That's what they look like right there. So I bought new ones. They come with the new piece and the new parts and grease to put on. And they're pretty expensive, but there's some that are even more expensive than that. But they were never available, from what I've been told. They were never available as their own part from GM. GM didn't sell them individually, so people have machined them. You know, they took the original parts and machined new ones. And it looks like they work fine, the ones you get. And if you have the skills, you can probably do that yourself if you have access to a mill machine or something. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be a simple video. It's not going to be, it's basically just refurbing these parts. Also, I'll have a little bit showing the transmission. Basically, I'm just going to take it apart and clean it. I've already had it apart and looked at it. Grease is dried up in it, but it looks fine. So one of the first things you got to do on this is take these nuts off. These are just regular nuts. Well, they're not regular nuts, but they function as a regular nut. And to do that, you have to have a 3/4 inch socket. They come off fairly easy. I imagine it depends on how rusty they are. If you have an impact, it makes that easier too. Then underneath there, you got a spring, piece of spring steel. I guess it just keeps tension on there, I don't know. But they come off. I'll just put them aside and clean them up and paint them. So once you do that, you can lift this up and you can see all the parts a little bit better. And basically these are riveted, so you can't disassemble them completely. You got some pieces that go on top of here that come off. They're like to keep it lined up. And everything's kind of dried out. On this one. To take this middle piece out, you just need to take the 2 bolts. Take these 2 out right here. I guess I should say screws. Screws are pretty small. And this is what it looks like. It's got the gear here, and it's got the straight one in there. So once you take that off, you are able to pull out the bottom part, the track that it slides front, forward and back on. And it's probably froze up from time, but it comes out. There we go. And that's what it looks like. You see these plastic pieces come off the tracks right away, and they're broken up. Not all of them though, a couple good ones. Maybe 2 out of the whole group. Looks like out on mine. I got 2 good ones out of all 8. And they're probably brittle, they probably break easy. You can see bits and pieces of the broken ones that's fallen off through the years. Anyway, that's off. It just has to be cleaned up and repainted. So now that that's off, you just flip it over and you got the bolts on the bottom that hold on the other 2 of these. Just take them off. And I did them one at a time so I could compare them when I go to put them back together, because a couple of them are similar. And you gotta be careful, don't lose your bolts. I just put my bolts back in the hole they came out of. Keep me from losing them. And the grease is literally hard that's in here. So these are the things that really need, everything needs cleaned up, but those need. I just use a rubber hammer to tap them loose. The grease has them kind of frozen in place. And I believe these 2 are exactly alike, or they appear to be, but the bolts are put in a different hole to turn them at a different position when you install them. I'm not sure if they're identical, but they look to me like they are. I did find a difference inside of one of them earlier. Instead of having a bearing, it had like a brass or a bushing in it. So I don't know if it maybe it had been replaced sometime. I'm not sure. We'll find out when we take these apart if they're the same or not. But now it just needs cleaned up. You can clean them up however you want. If you got a sandblaster, that'd be good. If you don't, there's other ways. I usually use this 90-degree die grinder. I always wear a mask when I'm doing it. You just clean it. It all depends on to what degree you want to make it. If you want it to be nice, usable, what I'm doing works pretty good. Some people may not care. They might put it back in there rusty. But that's what I'm doing now. All right, so I've cleaned all the rust and paint off of these. Not a lot of paint, more rust than paint. And I mean, as good as I can get them with what I got. If you have a sandblaster, you can make them perfect. They're gonna be perfect enough for me to be up under a seat. Next thing I'm gonna do is paint them. I also use degreaser to clean all the grease off of them. And then I'm gonna start going through these little things. I'll show some of that. They come apart fairly easily. So I already showed how it come apart. I can't really go back in time and replace what I recorded in that way. These are the last ones I had of this type. But I think you'll still be able to see what I'm doing. This thing is totally locked up and will not move right now, and it's all because it's got hardened grease in it. The grease is in these blocks. These are basically, they're plastic, but they work like a bushing. It's totally hardened in between the metal and the There's no way this would have worked. So it's very hard. I put a screwdriver in here and I can turn it. And the grease is extremely hardened, but it moved with that. There's no way a motor would have moved that. It would have burned the motor up. So if you got an old car that's been sitting and this stuff hasn't been moved, you better do what I'm doing here. Otherwise your stuff's not going to work. You're going to end up burning something up. Like I said, I think you could take these out and clean these bushings or these bearings, but I'm not taking mine out because they look like they could break easily. So I'm going to leave them in there and just clean them. Now everything's completely clean on this one, and I'm ready to put it back together. So down in, I'm going to grease this I'm going to grease this and turn it some. Make sure it gets greased good. And also grease down in there in the bearing race that's in the bottom. Put a little bit of grease right here. And then I'm going to spin it. And this thing's got Should be greased up fine now. They packed it full right here. In the factory it had more right there. I'm assuming it's factory. So then you take one of these bearings, they're the same, and put it down in the bottom. Well, actually I can put it on the shaft. I'm gonna grease this also. I'm gonna dry it first of all with air. Grease the part that threads down in there. Thread it all the way till it comes out the bottom. And it stops. This one bottoms out. I think the other one keeps going. This one bottoms out. And then I'm gonna put the greased bearing on there. And slide it down in here. The more rounded side goes down. Also, I'm going to grease the big gear here. And now I'm going to take the other bearing, coat it with grease just like you would a wheel bearing. And the more rounded side faces out. I'm going to take the bearing race and grease it. Slide it right down on there and it falls right down into place. You got to set it down in there straight. It'll fall right down into place. Falls down and it is flush with the surface. That's how you know you put it together right. If it's not flush, it's not right. And it's easy to, trust me, if you put that bearing in backwards, it won't be flush. I did that the first time I did one of these. And it has to be flat because when you bolt it down into the rail of the car, it's going to be sitting flat on the rail. So that's pretty much it for this part. Now it's ready to bolt back on the rail. So I'm going to work on this transmission, cleaning it up. I've already got it loose. I'm going to take it apart. So basically this consists of 3 coils in here, and they pull in and out with gears to determine which direction. It's got an electrical connector right here. So it slips apart like this. And there's your 3 electromagnets, which are coils. And then there's these parts that go in there. And then you got this is the part that gets drawn in and out of the magnet. It just needs cleaned up a little bit. This has white lithium grease in it. The grease is actually still somewhat liquid. I mean, it's still not bad. I'm trying to keep everything kind of the way it is. There's a little washer here. It's got to stay on there in the spring. Like I said, it's not really too bad. I'm just cleaning everything up so it can move freely. It has to be able to slide in and out of here. This thing's actually in really good shape. And you gotta pay attention to how it comes apart, because it's very easy to mix it up. I'm gonna put a little bit of white lithium grease on there. I got the spray on type. And it should make everything move really easy. So the way this works is when the coil, it's going to push this in so that this gear gets engaged. I'm going to pull them out one by one and clean them up and clean the place that they sit in. There's other videos, people talk about different types of grease to use, but clearly this one has been assembled with white lithium grease originally. So I'm just gonna keep what was in there in there. everything in here looks like brand new. But when I first took this apart, these things were kind of seized in place. And I saw another video where a guy had done this, and his were very, the grease had dried up in his, and they were very dry, and they wouldn't move. But this is the only part of this you want to grease too. You don't want to really be fooling with the electrical parts of it. But all this stuff's working and moves freely. I'm going to call it good. These parts, they look nice and clean, and essentially that's all I'm doing to this. Put the cover back on and leave it be. I think it's going to work just fine. Has 3 screws to hold it together. I'm just going to clean the outside up a little bit. Don't really want to wet it. Not a whole lot of cleaning required on this. It's not really dirty. You can make it look as good as you want. To me, it's good enough. My biggest concern is I don't want to damage it. So that's it. Now I'm ready to reassemble everything. So these are the parts after they've been painted, so we can reassemble them now. Everything looks like new. New enough for me. So this part right here is the one I had to get the new slide, I guess you'd call them bushings. Bearings, bushings, whatever you want to call them. And they go right here. I bought mine off of eBay. They fit really well. They look nice. They come with grease. Just grease them up. Looks like white lithium. I'm also putting a little bit of grease on the gear here. Should be enough to last a lifetime. Well, my lifetime. That's all it needs. So now, one end has this tab on it, and there's a back piece here. That's how I remember how it goes, and I did it like that. So you slide it in. Basically, it bottoms out on that, and that's how I set my other one up. And then you've got this one little piece here. First of all, you got to decide which way it goes. So mine is going to have to go this way because that's the way it goes in order for it to work. Slide it down in here, the gears will engage and you'll no longer be able to move this once you put the bolts in. What you got to do is make sure you put it back the way it came out. I have my other one there to look at, so I know that this is the right way. They basically face each other. The cables are going to be facing the middle of the seat. Once you're sure you got it started good, tighten it down snug. Now you can see you're not able to move this because it's engaged with the gear. And I'm making both sides match. It's very important that you have both sides equal or you will have some problems. Next, I'm going to do the, I'm going to wipe the excess grease off of this. This one is going to go to the back, or to this side. Again, I can tell because I'm looking at my other one. Well, actually, I'm backwards. This one goes right here. The side with the okay, so I did something out of order. Cannot do that until I gotta put those on before I put this one in, because now I can't slide this out of the way to take the bolts out. So put your two outside ones in first. Going to be putting this one on this side. So you set it down on there. And it's going to be angled at such an angle where you can still put the cable on it. The other one has to slide out so I can put it on. Essentially almost all the way back out. You gotta pay attention to how you turn them. These have to go in before you put in the middle one. Then you can slide this back in. Put the middle one back in. And you can see how these are facing. just snug them down like that. And now all we got to do is put the nuts back on there. So you got these little blocks. The blocks go on there like that on top of the So I got to make sure these are equal, and one of mine is not. These have to be down the right amount, or it won't work. They have to be down equal amounts, I should say. That's pretty much it. So now I've got them both. I just have to compare, make sure they're adjusted the same way. Because if they're not, your seat will sit crooked. The way I do them is just bottom them both out. That way you know you're at the limit. So if you're bottomed out on every limit, then you know that they are equal. So now it's just a matter of hooking the cables and everything back up to them.